Hi everyone and welcome to this new video. This time I will be tackling a costume that I've wanted to do for a while. As you saw in the introduction, it's the yellow cloak that's worn by Lily Collins in the 2012 film Mirror Mirror, where she plays Snow White. These costumes were designed by Eiko Ishioka, who is probably best known for designing the costumes for Bram Stoker's Dracula. Her work in this is, as usual, amazing. At this point, I would like to thank my patrons for their continued support of the channel. If you would like to become a patron, I will leave a link in the description below to my Patreon, or you could just leave a super thanks below the screen. So let's get into making this video, and I'll see you all at the end with the finished yellow cloak. For the outside of the cloak, I'll be using this yellow taffeta, which I picked up in Paris in November. It's actually a furnishing taffeta and it's 300 centimeters wide, so it's like extra wide, which is really good. And then for the lining of the cloak, I'll be using this pink silk that I picked up in Thailand a couple of years ago. I've made a half mock-up of the cloak to just check the pattern and proportions. I was like 98% there with what I wanted. I'm very happy with the proportion of this side of the bow, the shape at the back, which I'll show you in a second, and the only thing I really had to alter was here, and I had to insert just a little bit more room in the shoulder that goes over the arm to give it a bit more space. That's the back shape with the V, and then of course I'm not mocking the hood because it's just a half circle. When I was looking at this on the stand, it actually reminded me of a costume that was worn by Faye Dunaway in The Four Musketeers, where she plays Milady. If you'd like to see me make anything for that, please let me know in the comments. So the next job now is to unpick this mock-up, because I'm going to be using that as my pattern, and start cutting out the yellow and the pink fabric. I start by cutting out the yoke in the yellow taffeta. I sew the shoulder seams together. Next, I cut out the bias strips for the piping. I fold this in half and sew in the piping. Then, I sew this onto the edge of the yoke where I've marked it with a tacking line. So I'm having to cut out on the floor for this project just because the pattern pieces are so big. Here you can see the back panel. So I'm going to cut out all of these pieces, sew them up, and then do the same thing with the pink layer. Once the yellow layer is cut out, I seam all the pieces together. I then move on to cutting out the pink silk lining. Again, I seam all these pieces together as I did for the yellow layer. Next, I sew the pink and yellow layers together, down the fronts and around the hem. Here, I am hand sewing the arm slit layers together to create the opening. Once I have pleated the top of the cloak, I sew all the pleats in. I then attach the yoke to the body of the cloak by stitching in the ditch of the piping. For the hood, I sew the yellow and pink layers together along the straight edge. Once it is all pleated up, I then sew it onto a collar band. For the bows, I cut a bias strip of the yellow taffeta backed with a stiff net. I start by sewing the long edges together and then show the short edges. I divide the strip into thirds. I fold 1/3 over to make the loop. I sew this down with a running stitch. I then pull this up to create the gathers. Then sew into the gathers to hold them in place. Once I've made the other half, I place it on top and tack them together. I pleat up a short piece of bias taffeta and wrap it around the middle of the bow. Once I'm happy with how this looks, I then turn in the raw edge and sew it in place. And here's the finished cloak. She's turned out amazingly well. I think it's a very simple design, but a very effective design. I love the use of the colour, the gold and the pink really work well together. And it's just a really good shape, very theatrical. If you would like me to maybe consider making a dress that gets worn with the cape in the film, please let me know in the comments down below. And we'll see what we can do about that. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time with a new video.